The day started just like every other day for Benjamin. The cold wind whispered through the cracks in the half-finished walls of the uncompleted building he now called home. The floor was covered in dust and broken cement blocks. But Benjamin didn't mind. At least it was shelter. At least it didn't rain on him. Here, still wrapped in his thin, faded blanket, the only thing his mother had left behind for him. He slowly opened his tired eyes. His tiny frame stretched like a cat as he yawned, the early morning sun barely peeking through the broken window space. He rubbed his eyes, then reached carefully for the corner of the mat where he had hidden something important, a piece of bread. He unwrapped it from the black nylon bag, staring at it like it was a treasure. It was stale, a bit hard, but to him it was breakfast. He had picked it up from the market the day before, after the market women had packed up and gone home. He remembered how difficult it was for him to find that piece of bread yesterday. His stomach growled. He broke off a tiny piece and placed it in his mouth, chewing slowly, not allowing even a piece to fall. Food must last. That was one of the first lessons the street taught him. As he chewed, his eyes caught the rays of sunlight now crawling across the floor. A small smile flickered on his lips. "Good morning, Mama," he said softly to no one. Then he went quiet. His mother. It still hurt to think about her. It had only been a few months since she died, but it felt like yesterday. Every corner of his memory carried her voice, her smile, her touch. He remembered her soft hands brushing his hair when he cried at night. He remembered her voice saying, "Benji, eat, Mommy is not hungry." Okay. He had believed her every time. He never knew she was starving herself so he could eat. She had done everything. Washed clothes for people, swept dirty floors, cleaned muddy compounds. They paid her coins. Sometimes nothing, but she kept going. "You must eat, Benji," she'd always say. "You're my reason." Benjamin was just 7 years old when his world shattered. He remembered everything clearly. The doctor's tired voice as he shook his head and said, "It's treatable, but you don't have the money. Please, sir, help my mother. We will clean the floor, scrub the toilet when she becomes better." It had started weeks ago with a sharp pain in her stomach. Then came the cough, then the fever. Benji said, crying, Sorry, boy. There is nothing I can do," the doctor replied. Benji's heart sank. He clutched his mother's frail hand tighter as she lay weakly on the hospital bed, struggling to breathe. Her skin had lost its glow. Her lips were dry and cracked. She looked at him with tired eyes, trying to smile. "Doctor, please," Benjamin cried out, running to the reception. His tiny hands pounded the desk as tears streamed down his face. "Please help my mom. Don't let her die." But no doctor turned to look at him. They were all busy, walking past. Only one nurse knelt and hugged him gently. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "We've done all we can, but she's still sick. It's a stomach ulcer. She is dying of hunger," Benjamin sobbed. "You can't send her home like this." Her bed was taken away. She was discharged, not because she was better, but because there was no money to keep her. They went home with no medicine, no follow-up, just a small plastic bag filled with leftover local herbs that someone had given to them. His mother, who once sang to him at night and told him stories even when she was tired, could barely talk. She would wiesi whenever she moved. That night, Benjamin curled beside her on their worn-out mat in their tiny room. He listened to her shallow breathing and held her hand close to his chest. "I'll take care of you, Mama, I promise," he whispered. But in the morning, when the soft light of dawn slipped into the room through the broken window, Benjamin opened his eyes and noticed something was wrong. "Mama," he called softly, nudging her shoulder. No response. "Mama!" he called again, sitting up. Still no answer. He shook her gently, then harder. "Mama, wake up, please." Nothing. He let out a sharp, painful cry that echoed through the silent room. His mother was gone. The only person who had ever loved him, sacrificed for him, protected him, was now lying lifeless beside him on the mat. That day, Benjamin didn't just lose his mother. He lost his home. He lost security. He lost warmth, but something else was born inside him. A quiet fire, as he sat in that room holding her cold hand for the last time. He whispered through his tears, "I will become a doctor no matter what it takes. No child should ever lose their mother like this because of money." After his mother died, Benjamin had no one. No relatives, no home, no guidance, just the streets and a heart full of pain and quiet determination. Every day was a battle to survive, but every night he chased his dream. He began looking for books, old, torn, dirty ones that no one wanted anymore. He would search behind schools, digging through trash bins with his bare hands. It didn't matter how smelly or messy they were. If he found even a few pages of a textbook or a child's torn notebook, his heart leaped. "This one still has ABC," he'd whisper to himself, wiping dust off the pages. He would collect them, stack them in a nylon bag, and carry them everywhere like they were treasure. At night, when the streets grew quiet, he would go to the nearest working street lamp. It flickered sometimes, but it gave enough light. There, on a piece of broken cardboard, he would sit with his knees to his chest and start practicing. With a piece of charcoal or any pen he found on the ground, he would trace letters slowly, carefully. "A B? C," he murmured under his breath. D at first. The letters looked shaky, but he didn't stop. Every night, he came back. Letters turned into words. Words turned into sentences. Sometimes he would read out loud, sounding out each syllable. Passers-by would glance at him like he was strange, but he didn't care. "This one says hospital, and this one is doctor," he said proudly one night, pointing to a torn textbook page about the human body. Even without a teacher, Benjamin taught himself to read bit by bit, page by page. In the mornings, he searched for food or did odd jobs, but at night, he became his own teacher, his own classroom, his own hope. By the time he was 7, Benjamin already understood the routines of street life: where to find food, where to sleep without being chased, which market woman might give him leftover bread, and which gods would allow him to stay under their building's shade when it rained. That morning, like every other, Benjamin stepped out onto the street. The sun was just rising, casting a soft orange glow on the cracked pavement. His jacket, an oversized, dirty thing with one torn sleeve, hung loosely over his tiny frame. His shorts barely reached his knees, their edges frayed and stained with dust. But what he cherished most was the small crossbody bag hanging from his shoulder. It was old and faded now, but to Benjamin, it was priceless. It was the last gift his mother ever gave him before. C'est bien. Inside the bag were his treasures: a few broken pencils he had found near school gates, 2 eraser pieces, and several faded notebooks he had rescued from trash bins. Most pages were torn or written on, but hidden in between were blank spaces, and those were golden to him. He touched the bag gently and whispered, "Mama, I'm still trying. I won't stop." Then he took a deep breath and began his walk through the town. The streets were already busy. Car horns blared. People rushed past him, some ignoring him completely, others casting brief glances filled with pity or suspicion. But Benjamin had a mission. He made his way toward his usual destination, St. Peter's School. After a 20-minute walk, he arrived at the tall white fence that surrounded the school. The wall was high, but near the back there was a broken part, just enough space for a small boy like him to slip through. He had discovered it months ago. He looked left and right to make sure no one was watching. Then, quick as a cat, he ducked down and crawled through the gap. Inside, he moved like a shadow. He knew the path by heart, past the storage room, behind the mango tree, and finally to the back of Class 3A. He wrapped his arms around his legs, his eyes watching the schoolyard like a silent observer. Soon, the school buses began to arrive. One after the other, shiny yellow buses pulled into the compound, and excited children began to pour out. They wore crisp white shirts and sky blue skirts or shorts. Their socks were dazzling white, and their shoes shined under the sun. Benjamin stared. The contrast between them and him was like day and night. He looked down at his dirty jacket and bare feet. A soft sigh escaped his lips. As the students walked into their classes, he heard them talking. "GHI. Hate waking up early," one girl groaned. Another boy said, I forgot to do my homework. Mrs. Okafor will punish me today. Benjamin blinked. How can someone forget to do something so precious? He murmured under his breath. Then he heard it. Up! Stand. Good morning, Ma. The chorus of students echoed from the classroom. The teacher had arrived. Benjamin inched closer to the window, careful not to make a sound. He couldn't see the board, but he knew it didn't matter. The voice of the teacher, clear and sharp, became his guide. He'd imagined every word, every diagram, every number she wrote on the board. His brain filled in the blanks, building images from sounds. He opened his notebook and began to write quickly. Each page was a treasure. Each word was hope. The teacher's voice floated through the open window. Now, if you have 5 oranges and you give 2 away, how many do you have left? Benjamin perked up, opened one of his tattered notebooks, and began writing. 5 2 shekelled 3. He smiled to himself. That's subtraction, he whispered. He scribbled the teacher's next sentence. Remember, children, always show you're working. It's not just about the answer. It's about how you got there. His hands moved quickly now, copying what he heard, turning sound into written knowledge. E, then, Eve, E. Didn't understand every single word. He knew it would make sense later. At night, under the streetlight, he would go over it again and again. Every morning, Benjamin arrived early and found his usual hiding spot at a corner of the building. As usual, Benjamin stood quietly behind the window of the classroom, his tiny fingers clutching his pencil. He imagined deeply in his heart what it would feel like to sit inside a real class. What does it feel like? He whispered to himself. To wear a clean school uniform. To have my own desk. A teacher who knows my name. His heart ached as he stared at the children inside the class, all seated with books neatly arranged on their desks. They raised their hands to answer questions. Some giggled quietly while others scribbled notes in fresh exercise books. The teacher paced in front of the board, explaining a math problem. Benjamin couldn't see the board, but he didn't need to. His ears were sharp, and his imagination was even sharper. He could picture everything in his mind. If I were there, he murmured, I would sit in front, so I won't miss anything. He imagined having classmates who would pass him notes and whisper answers during tests. He imagined raising his hand to ask questions, and the teacher smiling at him proudly when he got something right. He imagined break time, sharing snacks with friends, laughing under the big mango tree, swapping crayons or pencils. The thought brought a faint smile to his face. Suddenly, he heard the teacher say, Open your notebooks and write this down. Addition is bringing numbers together to make a bigger number. Benjamin quickly bent down. He grabbed a small piece of broken slate he kept hidden and scribbled the sentence in the sand with a stick. His worn-out notebook had no more space, but the earth was always there. The ground became his board. He wrote with care, each letter crooked but full of meaning. Addition is bringing, he muttered, slowly spelling the words as he traced them. When the heat of the sun pressed too strongly through the window and onto his back, he quietly moved away. He tiptoed through the bushes and slipped into the old abandoned classroom at the far end of the school compound. No one ever went there. It was quiet and safe. There, he sat cross-legged on the dusty floor and opened one of his rescued notebooks. The pages were torn at the edges, some stained with oil and water, but to him they were gold. He looked at a word he had written earlier, multiply, and tried to remember what it meant. He picked up a small stone and drew circles in the dirt. 2 groups of 3, he whispered. That makes 6. He paused and smiled proudly. I'm getting it, he said to himself. I'm really getting it. For the next hour, Benjamin practiced math. Then he flipped through another torn book and found a page where he had written a few new English words. Courage, hope, dream. He looked at them and traced each one again and again. I will not give up, he whispered. Someday I will sit in that class. Someday. Then he stood up, dusted his shorts, and hid behind the broken wall again, ready to listen to the next lesson as if his entire life depended on it. When the final bell rang, Benjamin remained in his hidden corner, peering through a gap in the fence. The schoolyard burst into life. Children rushed out of their classrooms, some waving exercise books in the air, others dragging their backpacks across the dusty ground. "Daddy, look, I got 10 out of 10. A little girl shouted as she leaped into her father's arms. A boy in a neatly pressed blue and white uniform ran up to his mother, shoving his notebook into her hands. "See my drawing, Mama?" he beamed. Benjamin watched silently. His eyes followed every hug, every pat on the head, every proud smile exchanged between parents and children. For a moment, he imagined what it would be like if someone was there waiting for him. Someone to smile, to take his hand, to say, "Well done, Benjamin." But there was no one. When everybody left, Benjamin stepped out from his hiding place. He moved carefully along the sidewalkway, avoiding open spaces where he could be seen. He crossed the edge of the field, scanning the ground for leftover books and pen. There, a half-used pen lying by the wall. There, an eraser, slightly dirty, but still good. And there, crumpled sheets of paper, with one side still blank. He gathered them into his crossbody bag, the one his mother had given him before she died, and held it close like it was made of gold. By nightfall, he was seated beneath his usual street lamp, the yellow glow casting long shadows on the pavement. From his bag, he pulled out the old storybook he had found that morning in the school compound, a small, tattered book with a missing cover. He opened it and began to read aloud in a soft voice, his lips shaping each word carefully. The pages were worn, some corners chewed away by insects, but to him, every line was precious. After a while, he started feeling sleepy. His eyelids grew heavy, the words on the page blurred. "Tomorrow," he whispered, gently closing the book. He tucked it back into his bag and made his way to the abandoned building he called home. Inside, he laid down on his thin mat, the only barrier between his small frame and the cold, hard floor. He curled up under his tiny blanket, pulled it to his chin, and let the hum of distant traffic lull him into sleep. In his dreams, he was back at school. Back at school, this time not outside a window, but sitting proudly at a desk, pencil in hand. The next morning, Benjamin woke again before the first rooster crowed. Something in his chest felt different. He didn't know why, but it was as if the air was lighter, his steps quicker. He dashed to the back of the bakery, 2 streets away, a place he knew well. Beneath the wooden table, he spotted a burnt piece of bread. To most people, it was waste. To Benjamin, it was breakfast. He crouched, grabbed it quickly, and began eating in fast, eager bites. No time to savor it. Today, he felt he needed to be somewhere. At the public tap down the street, he splashed cold water on his face, scrubbed his legs with his palms, and shook off the droplets. The early morning cold brushed against his skin, but he didn't care. He swung his crossbody bag over his shoulder, the old frayed one his mother had given him. Inside lay his treasures, his notebooks, a few pencils, a half-used eraser, small things to others, but to him worth more than gold. He walked along the gentle, still quiet street toward St. Peter's School. The students were just beginning to arrive, hopping out of buses and cars, their laughter carrying in the cool air. Benjamin slipped past the broken part of the fence, careful not to be noticed. Instead of heading to his usual window spot, he decided to hide early in the empty classroom he often used when the midday sun drove him from the schoolyard. But as he stepped inside, he froze. Someone was already there. She was. A girl, maybe his age, in a spotless white and blue uniform, the kind that looked like it had just been ironed that morning. Her backpack was beautiful, bright colors, no tears, no missing straps. Her neatly braided ponytail swung gently as she sat on a bench. In front of her lay an open notebook. She was staring at a math problem, her eyebrows drawn together in frustration. She tapped the pencil against the page inside. Benjamin stood by the doorway, unsure whether to stay or leave. The girl looked up. Their eyes met. Benjamin hesitated at the doorway. His first instinct was to run away to the safety of the fence where no one could see him. But there was something in the girl's expression that stopped him. She looked not angry, not afraid, just stuck. Her eyes flicked from the page to her pencil, frustration making her lips press into a thin line. Quietly, Benjamin stepped forward, his worn sandals barely making a sound on the dusty floor. When he got close enough, he saw the problem on her notebook. A simple addition question. The kind he'd mastered long ago from a crumpled, discarded sheet he once rescued from a junk pile. The girl suddenly sensed him, her head jerked up, and for a long moment, they just stared at each other, two worlds colliding in silence. Who are you? She asked at last, her voice trembling. I've never seen you in this school, and I know you're not a student. Her fingers tightened. On pencil. She shifted as if ready to run, but then her gaze lingered on Benjamin's face. There was no threat there, only calm, steady eyes, and something she couldn't quite name. Compassion, maybe. My name is Benjamin, said softly. Don't be afraid. I'm not a student here, but I can help you solve that. He pointed at the notebook in her hands. The girl frowned, studying him. If you can read and write, why are you not in school? And why are your clothes so? Her eyes scanned the stains, the frayed edges, the patches. Dirty. Benjamin's cheeks burned with embarrassment. He looked down at his tattered jacket, noticing the holes, as if for the first time. I don't have a school, he murmured. I can't afford it. Come to the window of your class to listen to your teacher. That's where I learn. The girl blinked, stunned, her pencil still frozen above the page. Why can't you afford it? Don't you have parents? And the girl asked, genuine surprise in her voice. Benjamin's gaze dropped to the dusty floor. I don't have parents. Mom died a few months ago. Her brows knitted. How about your dad? He shook his head slowly. Dad left us before I was even born. The words hung in the air, heavy. Something shifted in the girl's face. Her guarded look melted into quiet sorrow. That's so sad, she murmured. I only have my mom. My dad died in a car accident when I was just a baby. Every day I still wish I could see him again. But she paused, eyes softening. I can't imagine what it's like to have no parents at all. Benjamin gave a faint, almost apologetic smile. You get used to it, or at least you try. The girl straightened a little. My name is Mirabel, she said gently. I'd love to be your friend if you're not a bad person. That made Benjamin smile for real this time. I'm not a bad person, he said, a hint of warmth in his tone. Now, let me help you with your assignment. Your teacher notices you're missing from class. She nodded, sliding the notebook toward him. For the first time that morning, Benjamin felt like someone had actually seen him. Not just the boy in the shadows by the window, but him. Mirabel smiled, shifting her books aside and patted the empty space on the bench beside her. Sit here if you'd like to, she said, holding out her notebook and pen. I've tried my best to do this homework, she admitted with a small sigh. But it's really hard. The teacher will be mad if I don't finish it. Benjamin hesitated for a moment, then walked over and sat down beside her. He glanced at the page and smiled faintly. This one's not too hard. I know you'll get it once I explain. It's easy. He pointed to the first problem. You have 5 plus 3. That makes 8. Here's how. Raise 5 fingers on one hand. Now raise 3 on the other. Count them all together. See, 8. Mirabel tried it, counting carefully. Oh, she said, her eyes brightening. Now, Benjamin continued, do the same for the other questions. She worked through them one by one, and each time she got the answer right, she let out a loud scream. Yes, Benjamin leaned forward. Good. Now, for the next part, you're supposed to keep your answers in tally form. That means you represent each number with a straight line. After every 4 lines, the 5th one crosses through the first 4 like this. He sketched it neatly in her notebook. Mirabel copied it, nodding quickly. Together, they tried several more problems. Her pencil, scratching across the page as she counted, tallied, and checked her answers. Each success brought another excited smile from her, and Benjamin found himself smiling back every time. How did you learn that? Mirabel asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. Benjamin glanced up from the notebook. I learned by myself, he said quietly, with books I found on the ground. Primera them under the street lamp every night. Mirabel's mouth dropped open in surprise. You're so smart. The words sank deep into Benjamin's heart. No one had said that to him since his mother passed away. He felt something warm rise inside him and smiled chilly. You look like one of those genius students I see on TV, she added with a grin. Benjamin chuckled and shook his head. I'm not a genius, he sighed softly. I just love to learn. They bent over the notebook again, working through more problems. Then, in the quiet of the empty classroom, a low, rumbling growl broke the silence. Benjamin's stomach. It was loud enough for Mirabel to hear. She turned to him slowly, remembering a lesson from class about what that sound meant. Benjamin, have you eaten breakfast? He didn't answer. His eyes dropped to the floor, shame prickling at his cheeks. Without another word, Mirabel reached into her backpack. She pulled out a small food flask, the metal still warm in her hands, and placed it gently in front of him. Here, you can have this. Still have it. Some snacks in my bag. I'll eat those for lunch. Benjamin stared at the flask in disbelief. This was the first genuine gift anyone had given him since his mother died. His throat tightened. I can't accept this, he whispered. It's your lunch. Mirabel shook her head firmly. It's yours now. You need energy to learn. Ben sighed, gesturing to her. To keep the food. You can have it, Mirabel insisted. Most times I take it back home untouched and the food just spoils. Benjamin shook his head slightly, but she went on, her eyes bright. It's jollof rice and a big piece of chicken. You'll like it. At the mention of jollof rice, Benjamin's stomach betrayed him again with a loud growl. Mirabel heard it clearly. Their eyes met for a moment, hers full of quiet insistence. His clouded with hesitation. Benjamin's fingers twitched toward the flask, but then curled back into his palms. I need the food, he thought, but if I take it, it will feel like I'm being paid for helping her. I can't let it seem like that. I can't, he said aloud, shaking his head. Mirabel sighed, realizing he meant it. She let the matter drop, though the look in her eyes said she still wished he'd take it. Instead, she began talking about the school, the teachers, the students, and the games they played during break. Benjamin listened closely, picturing every detail in his mind. Classrooms filled with desks, the ringing laughter on the playground, the sight of students in clean uniforms chasing each other under the sun. And in his heart, he imagined what it might feel like to belong in a place like that. Where do you live? Mirabel asked, tilting her head, her eyes filled with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Benjamin hesitated for a moment. You live around, he finally said, almost as if the words themselves were uncertain. What do you mean around? Mirabel asked again, her brows knitting together. She wasn't satisfied with that answer. I mean, anywhere, Benjamin explained slowly, his gaze dropping to the dusty floor. Sometimes by the bakery, sometimes near the old train station, or under the market sheds when it rains. It depends on the night. Mirabel's eyes softened, but before she could respond, the sound of quick, firm footsteps echoed down the hallway. It grew louder with each passing second until a shadow fell across the doorway. Mrs. Linda appeared, her sharp eyes instantly locking on Benjamin as she saw his dirty clothes, unkempt hair and frail body. At first, there was only confusion in her expression, but it quickly hardened into disapproval. Her voice was stern and clipped. Who are you? What are you doing here? And how exactly did you manage to get inside this school? Benjamin froze. Every muscle in his body told him to run, to vanish before things got worse. His heart began to pound so loudly he could barely hear anything else. But before he could move, Mirabel's small hands shot out and gripped his firmly. Leave him alone, Mrs. Linda, she said quickly, her voice trembling, but steady enough to be heard. He's my friend. He's been helping me with my homework. Mrs. Linda blinked in disbelief. You can't be serious. This boy, she gestured toward Benjamin with a stiff hand, shouldn't be in here at all. I'm taking him to the principal's office right now. We need to find out how he got in, and he will be punished for trespassing. The words principal's office made Benjamin's stomach tighten into a knot. He knew what that meant. Trouble. Trouble meant being banned from ever stepping foot here again. And if he was banned, there would be no more lessons by the window. No more scraps of notebooks. No more hope of learning. He's just helping me, Mirabel insisted, her grip on his hand tightening as though she could shield him from whatever punishment was coming. You can't punish him, please, Señora. Linda, he hasn't done anything wrong. Mrs. Linda's eyes narrowed. Helping you or not, this is against the rules. Rules are rules. Mirabel, if we let one stranger in, tomorrow there will be 10 more. But he's not just a stranger, Mirabel protested, her voice now rising in urgency. He's smart, he's kind, and she faltered for a second, glancing at Benjamin's worn-out clothes. He's my friend, and I'm not letting you take him away without listening to his side of the story first. Benjamin stood frozen, his breath coming faster, his mind racing. He had never had someone stand up for him like this. Mrs. Linda sighed, clearly torn between duty and curiosity, her eyes flicking from Mirabel to Benjamin, weighing her decision. Is there a problem here? The new voice cut sharply through the tense air like a blade. Mirabel turned her head toward the doorway, and her eyes instantly lit up. Mom. Benjamin also turned, his eyes widening as a tall, dark-skinned woman stepped gracefully into the room. She was beautifully dressed in a perfectly ironed, sleek, white suit that looked like it had just come from the designer's hands. In one arm, she carried a small, but obviously expensive black handbag. Her hair was neatly braided into a ponytail that fell over her shoulder, and her skin was smooth and glowing. Benjamin felt his breath hitch. He didn't need to ask who she was. This had to be Mirabel's mother, Mrs. Janet. He remembered how Mirabel had described her earlier. Kind, beautiful, and strong. Now seeing her in person, he understood exactly what she meant. Mrs. Janet's gaze swept across the scene. Her daughter holding hands with a boy she didn't recognize. Mrs. Linda standing with a rigid posture and the strange tension in the air. Her eyes narrowed slightly as they landed on Benjamin. Mrs. Janet. Mrs. Linda began immediately, sounding both relieved and defensive. This boy entered the school compound without authorization. I'm on it, and I'll make sure he faces the school authority for this. Benjamin's chest tightened at her words. He could feel the judgment in the air, thick and heavy. He dropped his gaze to the floor, already preparing for the worst. But before Mrs. Linda could finish her sentence, Mirabel stepped forward, still gripping Benjamin's hand. He didn't commit any crime, she burst out, her voice trembling, but firm. He's just here to help. He's been the one teaching me. Mrs. Janet blinked in surprise, looking down at her daughter. Mirabel continued quickly, her words tumbling over each other in a rush to be heard. He taught me how to do addition and subtraction on my fingers, and he made me understand what I was being taught in class. Mom, I couldn't do my homework before, but now I can because of him. Here, eyes. Darted toward Benjamin for a moment, then back to her mother, her expression pleading. Please, he's not bad. He just wants to learn like me. For a moment, the room was silent, except for the faint hum of voices from distant classrooms. Mrs. Janet's eyes softened slightly, but her expression still held questions. Questions she clearly expected to be answered before making a decision. Mom, please, Mirabel pleaded, her grip on Benjamin's hand tightening. Don't let them take him to the principal. The principal is your friend. I know you can talk to her. Mrs. Janet's eyes moved slowly, deliberately, scanning Benjamin from head to toe. But unlike so many others who looked at him with pity, disgust, or suspicion, her gaze carried no trace of judgment. She didn't see him as less than human. Instead, her eyes were calm, curious, and searching, as though she was trying to read a story written in the dirt on his skin and the tears in his clothing. Mrs. Janet turned toward Mrs. Linda. Her voice was low, smooth, and controlled. Don't worry, you can go. Just let me handle this. Mrs. Linda hesitated, clearly torn between following procedure and obeying the unspoken authority in Mrs. Janet's tone. She lingered a moment longer. Then Mrs. Janet gave her a subtle but firm nod. One tat, sighed. Everything is under control. Finally, Mrs. Linda left, her heels clicking away down the hall. Now it was just the three of them. Mrs. Janet's eyes drifted back to Benjamin, scanning once more from his messy, unkempt hair to the worn-out, torn clothes that hung loosely on his small frame. There was no mockery in her gaze, only quiet contemplation. "Mom," Mirabel said, breaking the silence. "He taught me things that even my teacher doesn't teach in class." Mrs. Janet slowly crouched down to their level, her pristine white suit folding neatly as she lowered herself. She looked Benjamin in the eye, her expression warm but measured. "Thank you, Benjamin," she said softly, "for being such a good teacher to my daughter." Benjamin blinked, unsure how to respond. No adult, no stranger had ever thanked him like that before. His throat felt tight, and for a moment, he thought he might not be able to speak at all. But before he could say anything, Mirabel spoke again, her voice bubbling with determination. "Mom," she said quickly, "I want you to take us out so we can have dinner with him. Please. He's done so much for me." Her words hung in the air. Benjamin's heart thudded. Dinner with him? The idea felt so far from his world that it almost didn't seem real. Mrs. Janet studied her daughter's eager face, then turned her gaze back to Benjamin. Benjamin hesitated at first, his eyes darting from Mrs. Janet's face to Mirabel's hopeful expression. He wasn't used to invitations, especially ones that involved food in a real restaurant. But Mirabel's voice carried a gentle insistence that slowly broke down his walls. "Please," she pleaded, squeezing his hand gently. "You've helped me so much today. This is my chance to say thank you." After a moment of silence, Benjamin nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "All right," he said softly. Mirabel's face lit up instantly. Her homework was now complete, done, neatly and correctly. And in her young mind, this dinner was the perfect way to repay the kindness she had received. Mrs. Janet took each of them by the hand, her grip warm and confident, and they began walking toward the school's main gate. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows on the ground, and the warm breeze carried the distant sound of children laughing on the playground. As they approached the gate, the security guard stepped forward, his voice booming. "Who is this?" he barked, pointing directly at Benjamin. "When did you get in here?" His tone was sharp and suspicious. "Don't worry, Mr. Man. I will take care of him," Mrs. Janet said calmly, her voice carrying both authority and reassurance. The guard frowned. "He needs to be disciplined." He sighed firmly, crossing his arms. "I said, don't worry," Mrs. Janet repeated, her tone sharper this time, but still composed. "Everything is under control. I will take full responsibility." "Are you sure, madam?" the guard pressed, clearly not convinced. "If you don't mind, I can—" Before he could finish, Mrs. Janet cut him off with a raised hand. "Don't worry." Her tone left no room for argument. The guard stepped back reluctantly, muttering under his breath as they walked past. Once they were outside the gate, Mrs. Janet turned to Benjamin, her eyes studying him with curiosity and respect. "So, you're the famous Benjamin?" she said with a small smile. "The one who has been teaching my daughter. Thank you very much." Benjamin's lips curled into a shy smile. The words sank deep into him. He couldn't remember the last time an adult had thanked him so politely. His voice came out almost hesitant. "It was nothing," he murmured. But inside, he felt a warmth he hadn't known in a long time. A sleek black SUV was parked just outside. Mrs. Janet led them to it, opened the doors, and they climbed inside. The leather seats were smooth and cool beneath Benjamin's hands. Luxury he had never experienced before. The ride through town was quiet for Benjamin, though Mirabel chatted away to her mother about her day. When they finally pulled up in front of one of the most elegant restaurants in town, Benjamin's eyes widened. Inside, Mrs. Janet led them to a corner table by the window. The air smelled of freshly baked bread and roasted spices. Benjamin sat stiffly, unsure of what to do in such a place. A waiter approached with a smile, handing them menus. Mrs. Janet didn't hesitate. She ordered generously, telling them to choose whatever they liked. Soon plates arrived, each one more colorful and fragrant than the last. Before him sat a steaming mound of jollof rice, its bright red grains glistening alongside a huge, perfectly roasted turkey leg, seasoned with spices that filled the air with a mouth-watering aroma. Benjamin stared at the plate for a moment, almost afraid to touch it. This was unlike anything he had ever eaten. Slowly, he picked up his fork and took his first bite. The flavors burst in his mouth, rich, smoky, and slightly sweet. The turkey was tender, the juices running as he bit into it. He didn't devour the food quickly like he sometimes did on the streets. Instead, he took his time, savoring every mouthful as if trying to memorize the taste. As they ate, Mirabel talked non-stop, her words tumbling out with excitement. She told her mother all about school, her friends, the games they played, and the subjects they studied. She even recounted the exact way Benjamin had explained addition and subtraction to her earlier. From the way Benjamin occasionally nodded or added quiet comments, Mrs. Janet could see it clearly. This boy wasn't just street smart, he was deeply intelligent and surprisingly mature for his age. Mrs. Janet leaned forward slightly, her elbows resting on the table as she studied Benjamin. "So, Benjamin," she began in a gentle but curious tone. "Mirabel told me you've been helping her with her math. Tell me, where did you learn to do it so well?" Benjamin swallowed a bite of rice before answering. "My mom taught me some," he said quietly. "The rest I learned on my own." "On your own?" Mrs. Janet's eyebrows lifted in surprise. "Yeah," Benjamin replied, his voice steady but humble. "I pick up old notebooks and textbooks from the trash. I take them to sit under the streetlight at night, and I teach myself to read the words and solve the math problems." Mrs. Janet's eyes softened. "And why didn't your mother keep teaching you?" "See, ask it." Benjamin's gaze dropped to his plate, his fork covered in midair as his voice became faint. She died." He paused, the weight of the words hanging in the air. "I lost her a few months ago. She had ulcer, and she didn't make it." The clink of cutlery from surrounding tables faded in Mrs. Janet's mind. She reached out without hesitation, brushing her hand gently over his hair, ignoring the dust and tangles. "I'm so sorry," she said softly. Benjamin nodded once, as if accepting the comfort but unwilling to linger on it, and quietly resumed eating his chicken. "And your father?" Mrs. Janet asked after a moment, her tone cautious. "He left us," Benjamin replied bluntly. "Mom said he abandoned her when she was pregnant with me." Mrs. Janet's brows furrowed. "Then, who do you live with now?" "Alone," Benjamin said simply, looking up at her with matter-of-fact eyes. "I live alone on the street anywhere I can." "You mean?" Mrs. Janet leaned back, her voice now tinged with disbelief and concern. "You live on the street?" "Yes," Benjamin said, still chewing a piece of the turkey. Mrs. Janet shook her head slowly. "You're so small, and yet you're facing this kind of life all by yourself." "It's not a big deal," Benjamin replied, his tone calm as though discussing something ordinary. "I already know my way around the street. I know where to get food and where to sleep without being disturbed." "That's so bad," Mrs. Janet murmured, her mind processing the reality of his words. After a pause, she asked, "But how did you get inside the school compound?" Benjamin hesitated, then admitted, "I went through the broken part at the back. I know I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry, but I needed to listen to the teacher. I squatted the back of the classroom window every day to hear what the teacher is teaching." His eyes lit up slightly. I felt the urge to know what it's like to be in a real school." Mirabel, who had been listening intently, leaned closer to him, her voice filled with compassion. "You can come to study with me," she said eagerly. Then she turned to her mother. "Canty, Mommy." Mrs. Janet looked at both of them, her daughter's pleading eyes and Benjamin's quiet, steady gaze. She sat there in silence for a moment, clearly moved, but unsure of the right words. "We can help him, Mom," Mirabel urged again. "Can't we?" Mrs. Janet's lips parted, but no answer came yet. Her mind was racing, weighing the possibilities, the risks, and the undeniable pull of compassion she felt for the small boy sitting across from her. "I know we can," Mommy Mirabel insisted, her small hand tightening its grip on her mother's. Where do you think Benjamin would go if we leave him here? The question, so simple and direct, took Janet completely by surprise. She hadn't expected such fierce conviction from her daughter. She looked down at the small Dust Street boy who stood silently beside them. I don't know, Mirabel, she answered honestly, her voice softer than she intended. He said he lives on the street, that he is used to it and he knows his way around. Mirabel's face crumpled with disbelief. But that's not a home, Mummy. That means he doesn't have a bed with a soft pillow or toys to play with. He doesn't have anyone to tell him stories before he goes to sleep. Her voice trembled, filled with a child's pure, uncomplicated empathy. He wants to learn so much, but he can't afford to pay for a real class. Doesn't even have someone to buy him a new book, and even with all that, he's trying so hard. He's smarter and better at math than everyone in my class. Janet felt a sharp pang in her chest, a physical ache of sorrow. She looked at Benjamin, and her heart broke. Huge, silent tears were already rolling down his cheeks, tracing clean paths through the grime. Wasn't they? Sobbing, or making a sound, just standing there as his carefully built walls crumbled. He is very kind, Mummy, Mirabel added, her voice thick with emotion. He taught me math, even when he didn't know me. He taught me better than my teacher. She saw the raw hope in her daughter's eyes, and the profound, silent despair in Benjamin's. Darling, we can't just take him like that, she explained gently, though the words felt hollow even to her. There are laws for this. Even if we want to take him in, we have to follow the legal pathway. But you're a lawyer, Mom. Mirabel's voice rose with renewed hope. You're the best lawyer. I know that you can prepare the papers. You could do it in less than 24 hours. If you wanted to. She leaned in closer, her final words a whisper that struck Janet's heart. Just imagine if it was me out here all alone. Wouldn't you want someone to help me, too? That was it. Janet was completely touched, her professional reservations melting away in the face of such powerful love and logic. She turned her full attention to Benjamin, ergasse, soft and full of a warmth he hadn't felt since his own mother held him. Benjamin, she began, her voice steady and sure. Would you agree to stay with us? We would welcome you into our family. We would treat you like our own, and you would become one of us. Benjamin looked from Janet's earnest face to Mirabel's, which was shining with hope. He could see the genuineness and the love in there. Careless, he remembered how Mrs. Jeanette had stood up for him, defending him when the teacher wanted to take him to the principal's office. These people weren't offering him pity. They were offering him a place to belong. He hadn't asked for it. He hadn't begged for it. This kindness just came from their hearts. Pure and unconditional. The weight of all his lonely nights, his hunger and his fear, suddenly felt too heavy to carry alone anymore. He gave a small, shaky nod, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. He had found his people. That same afternoon, Mrs. Janet was on the phone. Her voice was no longer soft and motherly, but firm and commanding, the voice of a lawyer who would not take no for an answer. She made calls, quoted laws, and pulled strings. Within a day, the papers that gave her legal permission to be the guardian of the young orphan were prepared and signed. It became a fresh, clean start for Benjamin. That was how everything changed for him. The very next day, Mrs. Janet and Mirabel took Benjamin out for a day of shopping. He walked into stores filled with bright lights and endless racks of new clothes, a world away from the dusty market. Stalls, new. They bought him new shirts, pants, shoes, and bags. Everything a growing boy needed. He touched the soft fabric of a new sweater, his fingers tracing the seams, still not quite believing it was his. The next week, he walked through the gates of St. Peter's School, not through a broken fence, but through the main entrance, holding Mirabel's hand. He was wearing a crisp new uniform, and for the first time, he felt like he truly fit in. He walked into the classroom and sat down at his own desk, sitting comfortably with his new classmates. A wide, confident smile spread across his face as he looked at the teacher at the front of the room. For the first time in his life, he didn't have to squat at the back of a window. He wasn't hiding, and he was not afraid of being seen. He was home. That was how Benjamin's life changed forever. If you love this tale, don't forget to subscribe so you'll be the first to enjoy more heart-touching stories like this. Thanks for watching. See you in the next.